Hello, everybody. Welcome to this last panel before lunch, devoted to AI, artificial intelligence, but more from a business transformation perspective. So since OpenAI went public with ChatGPT precisely 2 years back, the world discovered the power of generative AI. Machines can now understand and interact in natural language, sound and images, getting closer than ever to human intelligence. With 250 million users worldwide today, ChatGPT turns out to be the fastest adopted application ever. Last October, 2 Nobel Prizes have been awarded, one in physics to the pioneers scientific of machine learning and deep learning and machine learning, actually, and one in chemistry to 3 scientists that have been involved in also a breakthrough innovation of AI modeling of proteins. This is clearly the utmost recognition of how these steps are absolutely paramount in the artificial intelligence journey. Since then, I must say, things have been accelerating massively. And this is due also to private capital pouring into that new technology. To take an example, and solely in the enterprise software space, AI and Gen AI segment has been attracting in 2024 $27 billion of VC, venture capital, and private equity funding, which is exactly 6 times more than 2 years back, and 30% of the entire segment. On that front of private capital supporting this new technology, as we've seen in the last 2 panels, the GAFAM are definitely leading the way. OpenAI is the famous example, backed by Microsoft, raised $14 billion. In the last round, $6.6 billion, and is valued $157 billion. The second one in row is Anthropic, supported by Amazon, raised $8 billion and is valued $40. In parallel, of course, Meta and Google are developing their own models, but they are not the only game in town. Just on the US front, 44 startups in 2024 have raised more than $100 million, which gives a sense of how buoyant this segment and this space is. These record fundings are underpinned by an unprecedented expectation of value creation. Bloomberg analysts are predicting that artificial intelligence market would be worth $1,300 billion by 2032, about half of French GDP and 3 times more than the luxury market, 3 times as big, I must say. So for sure, and we had examples over the last 2 panels, generative AI is transforming our lives, the way we work, warfare, but also across the board, research and development. It's boosting research and development, which is a factor acceleration of innovation itself. To take the example that is the most promising, I mentioned the AI modeling of proteins before, but on the new therapies, generative AI is opening new ways and promising for personalized medicine, which is one of the hopes, okay? For business leaders, generative AI is expected to bring the next frontier of automation and productivity. No doubt that, and no surprise, that in our Capgemini Research Institute latest survey, Gen AI appeared as being an item on board agenda for 96% of respondents. If we now deep dive on enterprise level, the co-pilots and assistants are promising to turn workforce into augmented employees. And in this session, we'll take a look at precisely 3 examples illustrating that factor. Along these expected benefits, we can't ignore that generative AI is also raising some fundamental concerns. A few examples. The fact that scientists signed an open letter in 2023 urging for a pause on AI research and the development of ethics and regulation resonates with an unprecedented fear about tech singularity, an hypothetical point where computers would transcend human intelligence. Nobel Prize Geoffrey Hinton himself alerting on AI-related risk for humanity the day after he received the Nobel Prize, or Davos 2024 summit pointing to disinformation risk. All this explains why Gen AI is also a hot topic on political agendas, and that was very well detailed by Lee Tidrich in the previous session. France hosting mid-February the Artificial Intelligence Action Summit, the third of its kind, by the way, is very likely going to put a lot of emphasis on the question of international governance of AI. Now, if we focus on Gen AI enterprise adoption, a few examples of what's on the critical path. We heard that large language models can hallucinate. Of course, for enterprise adoption, explainability, auditability, and transparency are absolutely paramount. Then you need to train these large language models on huge sets of data. This raises intellectual property rights and data protection issues, not a trivial topic for policymakers, as demonstrated by the recently published EU AI Act. Moreover, the environmental impact of Gen AI cannot be ignored. LLMs are very compute intensive. To give you an example, a search on ChatGPT is 10 times more compute intensive than a search on Google. The amount of data that is generated is doubling every 2 years, raising the need for data centers, which are expected in numbers to increase by 48% between now and 2030, with the correlating amount, of course, of energy power needed. So, International Agency for Energy is expecting data centers to consume by 2026 as much as Japan itself. The good news is that foundational models are not limited to large language models. Innovation is still going on that front. And in this session, you will hear about new technologies and different foundation models. One with Rotem about cognitive language model, and later on with Liquid about liquid foundation models. So on this panel, it is my pleasure to welcome on stage today Lucia Russo, economist and policy analyst in the Artificial Intelligence and Digital Emerging Technologies Division of OECD, Rotem Alaluf, Chief Executive Officer of Wand.ai, Eiso Kant, Co-founder and Chief Technology Officer of Poolside, who is joining us, thank you Eiso, through Visio, as well as Felix Naser, Chief Operating Officer at Liquid.AI, through a recorded video. So, Lucia, we heard about policymakers, but we heard also about the hopes of competitive gains, and OECD is working on all that. Could you tell us a little bit about OECD perspective on GenAI promise for productivity?
Thank you, Lucia, and first of all, thank you to the organizers for inviting me to this very insightful event. So I will give a bit of background of the OECD role in the international AI governance landscape. At the OECD, we have been deeply involved in international AI governance for some years now. A cornerstone of our work has been the adoption of the OECD recommendation on artificial intelligence, which were adopted in 2019. And back then, they were the very first intergovernmental standard providing guidance to policymakers and practitioners on how to promote innovative, trustworthy AI that is aligned with human rights and democratic values. And since then, the work at the OECD has been to provide policymakers with guidance on how to move from these principles to practice. And we have a number of activities related to that, including a network of experts, and Lee Friedrich is one of our experts, for instance, because we truly believe that multidisciplinarity and multi-stakeholder cooperation is what matters in this field. And another key example is the OECD AI Policy Observatory, which is a platform that provides data and trends around AI, including policy developments, and all of this to inform decision-making. So, for instance, one of the data points that also was mentioned by Lucia, of course, is this surge in investment. And, for instance, we have noticed that since 2022, generative AI, investment in generative AI startups have raised from 1% of the total venture capital to 18%. And so this is testimony, the surge to the potential that the technology holds, and we heard many of these already being eloquently explained by previous speakers around potentials for personalized education, for accelerated drug discovery, and in general for breakthroughs in research and science. And ultimately for productivity gains across sectors of the economy. So when it comes to productivity gains, and if we can move to the next slide, their estimates actually widely diverge. And here, this is work done by colleagues in the economic department who recently released this paper. You can see the title on the right corner. And what they've done is they've contributed to this debate that, as you see, has quite a divergent outcome, because you can see that estimates are as modest as 0.1 percentage point of annual labor productivity gains, that is the study by Acemoglu, to 1.5 percentage points. And where does the OECD colleagues landed is somewhere in between 0.5 and 0.9 percentage points of contribution to annual productivity gains. So what does this tell us? It tells us that there is potential to boost productivity through AI, yet not to revamp productivity to the levels that we had in the 60s, though, of course, these estimates are subject to some factors. And these factors are notably the capabilities of AI systems, their integration across sectors, including, for instance, in robotics, the reallocation of factors across sectors, and this is perhaps the most important adoption that we heard already by previous speakers as being one of the key factors enabling actually competitiveness and productivity gains. And I think we'll hear more through concrete cases later on. So what also this points to is, of course, to the role of policymakers. And just to perhaps talk about, also complement this picture of the sunny side, as it was called by the previous moderator, let's just touch upon the challenges that we see, and Lucia has outlined some of them. Those that are mostly concerning policymakers around generative AI are related, for instance, to mis and disinformation. And we know this is not a new phenomenon, but the scale of content generation and propagation that has come about with generative AI has, of course, accelerated. Intellectual property rights, as we know, these models are trained on large corpora of text that, or other material that is often copyrighted, and so this raises a question of fair remuneration of authors. Labor market implications, these are also concerns, although, for instance, the OECD Digital Economy Outlook outlines that they have not yet materialized as we were thinking would have disrupted labor markets. So just to conclude on this, again, I would like to align the role that policymakers must play in governing these risks while fostering these innovative gains. So first is to build trust in AI, because demand of these systems hinges upon the fact that users trust that systems are transparent, are accountable, are safe, and this is through policy frameworks that ensure safety, transparency, and accountability, but not hamper innovation. And second, and perhaps the most important one, is support AI adoption through investments that in complementary assets, digital infrastructure, intangibles, but perhaps most importantly, skills, to enable the development of the deployment of these technologies. And third, facilitating reallocation of factors across the economy, and this includes labor, so facilitating transitions of the labor market, but also ensuring that capital is reallocated through well-developed financial systems. So I'll stop here, but happy to contribute to the conversation later.
Thank you, Lucia. And let's deep dive into examples. And I suggest we start with an example of co-pilot or assistant of the marketing officer. It's interesting because generally it's associated with creativity. So the solution we're going to demonstrate in a very short 90 seconds video is called Typeface. It's US-based. And the reason it's very short, so let me explain what you're going to see. You're going to see how out of a simple question expressed as a prompt, the solution is suggesting to the marketing officer a number of ideas, so it's ideating itself, that the marketing officer can pick and choose to then decide what channel is going to use, SMS, mails, or social medias, and the marketing campaign can then adapt and be customized to the targeted segments that the marketing officer wants to touch. So let's look at the video. short, but a perfect illustration of an assistant in one very specific role, the marketing officer. Let's now turn to you, Eiso, with Poolside, because this is also a very specific assistant for the software developer, right? So Poolside is the new generation of Gen AI coding assistants. I must say that it's a very young startup because Poolside came out of stealth last October and successfully closed a 500 million equity round at a 3 billion valuation. So a perfect illustration of the Gen AI new generation, just 12 months after its creation. What's the magic about Poolside, Eiso?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here, Lucia. Poolside focuses entirely on building the world's most capable AI, targeting software development capabilities. Our view is that in the next 10 years, the gap between human capabilities in software development and machine intelligence is going to almost entirely close. But we were also very aware that the vast majority of software developers in the world and where economic value gets created sits inside large enterprises. Right? The world doesn't often realize that JP Morgan has 50,000 software developers. And so Poolside entirely focuses not just on pushing capabilities in AI and software development, but also making sure that they can actually be deployed securely and put in action inside large, complex enterprise and government environments.
Interesting. So you're going to bring possibly, you're going to contribute to the problem of labor shortage in that space. So that's going to be interesting. But what struck me when you went public, Eiso, is that with your co-founder, Jason Warren, by the way, former CTO of GitHub Copilot, now part of Microsoft, you published a manifesto talking about artificial general intelligence. Can you tell us more? That was very, very striking.
So often when I'm in rooms like this, I like to ask the audience, how many people here fully believe that within the next decade, human intelligence, at least in areas that are economically valuable, we are going to entirely close this gap between what we're capable of and what AI is capable of. And very often we see a lot of hands in the room that go up. I posit that actually the vast majority of us are still underestimating what is going to happen in the coming decades. And Poolside's point of view is the following, is when we look at foundation models today, what they are fundamentally are when we have extremely large-scale data, the web for large language models, or Elon putting millions of cars on the road for solving full self-driving. These models are fundamentally compression of that data into a neural network, a model that forces generalization, essentially what we refer to as intelligence. And the reason I mention this in context of our manifesto is that areas where we have extremely large data, or we are able to gather it, like putting millions of cars on the road, or we are able to synthetically generate and verify it, areas that can be simulated, like software development, we are going to see that gap close first. And our belief is that the path towards AGI, which is, I think, a poorly defined term, but let's take it as closing the gap entirely between human intelligence and machine intelligence and all things that we consider economically valuable, is going to go through first closing that gap in software development. And not to give a monologue, but to TLDR it really comes to the fact that when we are dealing with the training of these models, we need to be able to tell them, as we are generating more and more data, when they are right and when they are wrong. And in domains that are deterministic, like code, where we can execute it, we can test it, we can verify it, we're able to push these models to more correct complex reasoning and correct coding capabilities faster than we might be in other areas. And so our view is that the road to AGI is going to go through building the world's most capable capabilities in software development and coding first, and secondly, only in other areas.
Wow, that's very, very interesting. And by the way, that makes me an easy transition to Rotem, because Rotem, with Wand.ai, what you're putting to the market is a platform that allows to build assistants in different roles that can collaborate one with another, right? This sounds very futuristic.
Yeah, so thanks a lot for inviting me here, and thanks a lot for the introduction. So the core things that Wand is doing is what we call artificial workforces. So we have the human workforce today, and we are working on an artificial version for companies to be able to have those agents collaborating together between themselves first, but also with humanity. So if we are thinking at the first generation of what happened with generative AI, the focus was to see how we are able to create a single artificial brain that is able to take information and to generate responses based on it. If we are thinking about the human brain in that context, so the human brain didn't change a lot during the last thousands of years, but the society and information flows between different humans is what enables us to step up and create most of the things that we've created today. There's still a lot of work on the artificial brain. We call it, what we are working on, we are calling it cognitive language models, with improved reasoning capabilities and planning capabilities and self-awareness capabilities that are working a bit differently than transformers today, that have several gaps. One of them is the need to have a lot of data, and as mentioned before, it's much easier to get to human capabilities when you have these execution capabilities after that you are able to get feedback into the system. And actually, coding is one of those, because you can run the program and see if it's working, get the output of it back to the models and have this feedback loop. But there are also other ways to get to those points. So there are still a lot of work in how we are creating this artificial brain. But as humanity evolved based on society interactions and working together, the next generation of the technology, we believe, is going to go to build a society of agents, a group of agents that are able to collaborate together and able to evolve over time. So let's take an example of a company today. Let's say Capgemini in that case. They are running and executing a lot of tasks. And when they understand that they have gaps in the executions, they will hire new people in order to execute the tasks in a better way next time. We want to enable agents in a similar processes. So they are able to execute the tasks that they have, that they are tasked from the human's part. And if they believe that they can do it better next time, we want this group to self-evolve, to kind of hire a new agent automatically, autonomously, in order to be able to run it in a better way. So very similar to what was discussed before, because the task was executed and we got some feedback from humans, ideally, at the end of this process, we are able to compare those two groups of agents after that. So having a group that is executing tasks, checking the inefficiencies in the execution, or at least assuming what's the inefficiencies and what's the solution, creating a new group of agents that is better, with new functionalities, with new roles that were added to this group, and then continuing this process until we have this artificial workforce group self-evolving in order to solve more and more and more complex tasks. So this is from the fundamental and core technology, and it's using a lot of reinforcement learning technologies and not only generative models technology and generative AI. So one thing is to build these artificial workforces, and the second thing is how humanity is going to collaborate in the best way with this artificial workforce. We need a lot of feedback in order to bring those artificial workforces to a level of execution that are similar or better than humans. And the best ones to give us this feedback is humanity. And the collaboration between the human workforce and the artificial workforce is going to be crucial on how we are enabling the systems to automate and execute more and more and more complex tasks over time. Ideally, we want every agent in our system to be able to approach to every person in any organization when it wants to ask a question, when it's getting stuck, when its critic technology tells it, I don't know how to solve it by myself. We want it to be able to go to every human in a complete two-sided collaboration process between humanity and the agentic system. So that's what we are working on, and as part of it, we are working also on the fundamental technology of a specific brain, but mostly on how those artificial workforces are working together with the human workforce.
That's fascinating. I'm sure you share my view that this is also futuristic. We hear you talk about collaboration between digital agents and the employee. What is the role of the employee in your vision?
So that's a great question. So I think one of the mistakes that's happening in both companies today, and enterprises and governments, and a lot of different organizations we are working with today, is that they are looking at the individual employee and asking the question of how AI can help this individual employee to do better. That's a very, very problematic way to look at it, because the employee is not necessarily going to do the same things. So you say, like, maybe he'll do something completely different. Let's take the Industrial Revolution for an example. People that handmade suit T-shirts moved to manage production lines. So they changed the role. The role was evolved to something different, and together they were able to achieve 100x, 1000x more productivity gains than what was possible before. We believe that we'll see a similar process. So first of all, in the first 5, 10, 20 years, we are going to see a lot of the feedback loops coming from humans. We want the agents to be proactive, to ask for feedback when they don't know how to solve a problem, and humans to help them to execute the problem. Agents will learn and will be able to do more and more things. But eventually, people, we believe, will evolve to the strategy, creativity processes, the things that are more random and requires and has less data. So again, connecting to what was told before, has a bit less data on how to take the decisions, what to do in those types of situations. So humans will focus more on those things, but most of the execution problems, we believe that will be transitions to agents eventually, especially first of all, in places that we have a lot of data, but after that, with the human feedback that is going to get to this loop, also with things that currently we don't have enough data, but we are going to collect it.
Thank you, thank you. That's so the more impact we expect from these solutions, the more it's important that at enterprise level, it's about trusted AI. So I will start with you, Eiso, because again, software development is at the core of this additional digital transformation. How do we ensure that trusted AI space in your solution?
So in our solution, we really take the premise that as models are going to get increasingly more capable, we're going to want to provide them with increasingly more information and access to the data inside our enterprise. And as you mentioned, code is one of the most valuable and often also one of the most secured assets inside most large enterprises. And so what we do today with Poolside is that we deploy our system entirely behind the firewall of the customer. This includes the model, this includes the data layer, the intelligence layer, and it also includes the applications. What is quite unique about us and where we sit in the world is that we have what's called a first-party relationship with Amazon Web Services, something that they've only done several times in the history of their entire company, meaning that when a customer is bringing Poolside on board inside AWS, the world's largest cloud, they're not just getting it entirely in their environment secure behind their firewall, but also the contracting party on the other end is Amazon. And this allows for an additional layer of security and trust that actually has more to do not just with the boundary of the firewall, but also in terms of support, in terms of contractual guarantees. Because like you said at the beginning, we're a young company. We focused on enterprises from day zero, and we were aware at the scale at which we were rolling out, we were going to require a very large trusted party to be able to do so with us.
Thank you. I mean, obviously, some of these words are pretty technical. I appreciate for the audience. I hope this is clear. And I'll ask the same question to you, Rotem, because that's paramount for adoption.
So, as mentioned, I think first of all, adoption and trust are required in enterprises. We are also, as a solution, took a decision from the beginning to be able to run behind the customer's government WPC on-premise solutions in order to enable them to run and to reduce the trust gaps that we are seeing today in enterprises. The second thing that I want to mention, people took large language models in the past, and we are seeing it evolving in enterprise currently, and they try to put it in, to push it to a specific task. And then they understood that there are a lot of different components that are missing. If it's, for example, how we are able to, how we are creating a technology that says, I don't know how to solve it, something that is a huge problem with large language models, like hallucination is one of the consequences of that. So how I identify that the large language model doesn't know how to solve this problem? One problem. Second, role-based access control. How we are getting those agents to have access to different data. How the agents knows to to send different questions that they don't know to humans. How we are able to run in on-premise environments and a lot of different things. How we are migrating data. A lot of different problems that we are seeing that requires a lot of different components. And that's why large language model, you can think about it as an engine of a car, but it's not a car. And enterprises not necessarily needs to deal with how to take an engine and build a car if they are not a car manufacturer in that case. And we want them to be able to take a car and customize it a bit, or even better in the case of artificial workforces, that the car will evolve automatically based on the enterprise needs and the enterprise questions in order to be able to execute in the best way. So in summary, AI, and especially when we are going to enterprise government mission-critical systems, it's not a one-component language model or any other foundational model. It's a much more complex platform that requires dozens of different components, and not necessarily, or even I'm always recommending not to do it, enterprise needs to build everything end-to-end. Tech companies need to do that. They need to push more in creating enterprise-grade solutions that providing this trust, providing all the different components needed for the enterprise to be able to use the system in a better way. The last thing that I want to say, the tech is difficult. The tech is difficult, but it will be solved. There are a lot of very smart people that are working in order to solve the tech barriers today. And in my opinion, we'll get to human capabilities in almost every task that we are thinking about in the next 5 to 10 years. What is difficult today, even more than the tech, is the change management, is how we are bringing the technology to the people, how we are creating this trust. There is a lot of work there for the consulting firms, for different companies to see how we are able to close this gap between the current situation, we can call it the old software situation, to this new world of AI workforce that is collaborating together with humanity. And I would say that it's even more difficult than the tech part today.
Yeah, and that's definitely explaining the pace of adoption. It's driving that, and of course, we know that this is not only about tech solutions. At Capgemini, we're well placed, that this is about also training people, a cultural change, processes, it's about organization, so it's a transformation across the board. So One last question, which is a little bit more provocative, possibly, at least for the tech industry. We start hearing that Gen AI solutions have the potential with agents to replace vertical solutions in given industries. So Eiso, and disrupt the software as a solution, as a service industry itself, which is today the bulk of what we see used by our clients. So Eiso, what do you think about that? Is this going to happen? Is that possible?
I think software is going to continue to play a role, particularly in areas where we trust them to be systems of record. We have lots of SaaS software today that exists in the world. I think Salesforce, is a great example, ERP systems and others that are truly a system of record for our business. It's where our data lives, and it's where we're going to want to continue that data layer to exist. However, there is SaaS software out there today that is trying to mimic what the human workforce does. And those pieces of software are going to those companies are either going to grow with AI and move towards a world where they are offering agents that are going to be able to actually take on more and more of those tasks at a higher level of abstraction or objectives that are being given to them. Or they're going to fall behind. I think to say that the entirety of SaaS software goes away is unlikely. We are still going to want a lot of software to exist. I want my bank transaction to be done by deterministic software, not by an agent. But it is very true that a lot more software that will sustain the test of time is going to be bigger systems of record, combined with companies that are able to take advantage of these models and turn them into really useful agents that augment the existing workforce.
So to some extent, Gen AI is also expected to disrupt the tech space itself and the software space in particular. So you see, nobody is immune from disruption, including the winners of today's market. So to end this part, I would like to introduce you to Liquid.AI, which is a startup, a spin-off from Massachusetts Institute of Technology that was created late 2023 and made public in last November, actually, a Gen AI model based on liquid neural networks. So we heard about the cognitive foundational model. This is a liquid foundational model mimicking the way, by the way, again, the brain is working. Unfortunately, Felix Naser, the co-founder and CEO, could not be with us today, but for a very good reason. He's in Vancouver, and they just closed and announced a $250 million equity fundraising for their Series B. So again, from inception, from day one, they joined the unicorn space. But Felix was nice enough to record a video that I suggest we watch.
Hello, everyone. Super happy to be here today. Thanks for inviting us to the World Policy Conference. I'm Felix Naser, the current COO at Liquid.AI. And what I want to share with you in the following is basically what we do at Liquid.AI, what specific advantages we enable with our technology, how this translates to use cases and real-world examples. So starting with our foundation technology, so Liquid.AI is a foundation model company. We are headquartered in Boston, Massachusetts, as you've already known through the introduction. So our foundation models, we call them liquid foundation models. From an architecture point of view and a kind of innovation point of view, they are enabling three major advantages. One of them is efficiency. So in comparison to what was possible before, especially based on transformer architectures, we are really enabling a step function in terms of efficiency, but also increased explainability. So we can really look into why the model is making which decision, and then based on that also take corresponding action and improve either data quality and or alignment with the human preference and what we want to make sure that the model is actually behaving in a way that is correct. And last but not least, all of this does not come with a quality disadvantage, but actually with a quality advantage. So what we've shown also with the latest release of our first series of foundation models, we have released language models at the size of 1B, 3B, and 40B to play around with at playground of Liquid.AI, by the way, if you're curious. And these models are, in their corresponding size, the new state of the art. So they really not only unlock efficiency and explainability gains, but also outperform any other model in their corresponding size, which is really exciting for us, and that's why we are also looking forward to continuing to work with our design and customers to bring this technology to the world and to enterprise users. Maybe one addition here is that you might wonder what use cases this enables and who are these early customers. As you can imagine, maybe based on these quality efficiency gains, especially if you look at on-device applications where all of a sudden Gen AI on the edges is possible because of these memory efficiency gains that we can enable through liquid foundation models. From a customer perspective, this is amazing because of two reasons primarily. One, latency is not dependent on any cloud calls, but answers can be computed directly on device. And secondly, from a business case point of view, for OEMs, there's no need to pay massive bills to any cloud API provider because everything or the majority of requests can be handled on device. In addition to that, we're also looking into financial services and biotech applications because, I mean, our foundation models are not only focused on language, as we've shown in our product launch recently, but basically can work with any sequential data type and outperform existing methods, both, again, in terms of accuracy, quality, and efficiency and explainability. So thank you, and looking forward to hear from you soon.
So this solution, as an example, is particularly relevant for industrial applications with business-critical aspects. As an example, autonomous car. Why? Because you can't afford, with an autonomous car, to all of a sudden take the risk of compute being disrupted off-grid. Otherwise, it creates safety issues. So the beauty of what they're putting on the market is that, in particular, it can work for some of these applications on a laptop. So the compute level has nothing to compare with the intensity of large language models. And for applications like off-grid, off-network, business criticality, where continuity of service is absolutely paramount, it's very important to be able to rely on different models. So I think what we wanted to show you is that innovation on this front is just moving very, very fast. There is ambition, and bridging the intelligence gap, as you heard, is definitely the race that these startuppers are on. On the enterprise front, the companies like Capgemini are, of course, helping clients master this new technology in the adoption. That's very important because we all want, there is no conflict of interest. It's absolutely converging that this can bring a lot of benefits in terms of productivity in particular, but that needs to be mastered in terms of adoption. So we just have 10 minutes left before lunch. I suggest we open for questions to the floor.
Thank you. My name is Krishnamurthy from Indonesia. I take the benefit of this panel to probably raise questions related to tomorrow's panel, which is food security and hunger. I saw you mentioned about workforce, and Rotem, you mentioned about the importance of how AI and human interface. Now, the workforce that I think very important for tomorrow's question about hunger and food security is the farmers. And in Africa, in Asia, the farmers has so many limitations. They are not well educated, they don't have any money, they don't have the computers. My question will be for both of you. Will AI help the communication of AI and the farmers? Will we see something that can help the farmers to produce more with that kind of technology? Because at the end of the day, we will have to eat the food that the farmers plant. We will not eat the AI. We will have to eat the food. So how AI help farmers so they can produce more? Thank you.
I can start. So great question. I must say that there are a lot of problems today with the current technology, and actually both liquid foundation models and a lot of things that we are doing are discussing about the problem of sustainability of running very, very large models. So we've been in touch with one of the largest countries in like the same topic, and one of the things that we saw that if we are taking the large models today, it doesn't make sense from a compute perspective and salaries perspective, even to see how to bridge the gaps. So the goal and value of small models that are still as smart or even smarter than the large models in order to help in those fields is very, very significant. Small models are also enabling us to go to fields that weren't enabled with the large models that weren't sustainable enough in different problems, and this is one of those types of problems. And from a farmer's perspective, I would say that so how we are able to optimize crop management, how we are able to know different insights about soils, different places, how like weather's problems, alerts, things like that. Agents are able to do a lot of things that would enable to create like more, to be more productive, to create more crop eventually that is in less efforts, and less waste also. One of the biggest problems today is waste because of data or missing data that is difficult in that specific scenario to get. It's like some potential weather changes, some potential like ideal way of soil and ideal way of medicines, and a lot of different things. So I believe that agents can help a lot there. We need to do a lot of work in order to make those models small, more efficient, more sustainable, in order that it will be also economical, feasible to go to those places. This is something that we are working and a lot of other companies are working on. It's hugely important. There are countries with more than 100 million farmers. So it's a huge, huge, huge opportunity, and of course, what feeds us eventually. So this is something that I believe that we need to push to. We are seeing also a lot of advancements in this field.
Eiso, would you like to add anything?
I would happily to. And first of all, terima kasih. I personally spent some of the early part of my career in Jakarta, in Indonesia. For me, I think we need to separate what we see as progress on AI that really is closing that human capability gap versus the underlying technology that is already doing things that humans today can't do. Predict the weather, use satellite images to be able to understand patterns in crops, etc. And I think what we have seen so far in the United States and in Western Europe is that technology is almost forcing any type of small-scale farming to consolidate into extremely large-scale industrial farming. And I would say one of the most successful artificial intelligence technology companies of all time is John Deere. John Deere in the United States and in other areas of the world has allowed for incredible yield and return on farming. But at the same time, because technology became one of the largest underpinning costs of farming in the West, it meant that small-scale subsistence farming or even small producers, farmers, frankly, barely exist anymore. And so to me, I think there's a broader question that gets accelerated with AI, but already was there in the last 15 years before, which is in countries like Indonesia, where there is not only the dominance of large-scale industrial farming. How will that play out? And frankly, there are much smarter people than myself who can answer that.
Thank you, Eiso. I think we are reaching the end of the panel, and I'd like first to thank the panelists, because that's been demanding, and we had several formats. I hope it was instructive for you, and we all wish you a nice lunch.